everyone, I'm Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here today with another trope video, and this time I've chosen books that are like dark academia, but like not fantasy. This is like dark academia in a horror setting. It's gonna be a blast. I actually liked almost all the books that I read for this video, so I'm really excited to tell you all about them. So the first one here is The School by Kelleher and Harriet Vidal. This was published in 1988, and this is by far the oldest book that I read for this. Usually I try to do like half older books, half newer books, but this was really like one of the only older books that I could find that I own that would fit into this. I mean, it's called The School, right? So you know it's gonna take place in a school. This I thought was pretty good. Very typical like vintage horror themes and things like that. This takes place at the Hanley School, and it is named after the headmaster, Malcolm Hanley, who is sort of a devious fellow. In the beginning of this, we get just like a short snippet of a terrible crime a student committed after finding Malcolm Hanley in bed with two of his students. And that event kind of fuels this evil spirit in the school. So, very 80s. And then for the rest of the book, we're really following a young woman named Vanessa, who's a student at the school, and this is like a really kind of elite school. Wealthy children of wealthy families go to the school. There's lots of drugs and drinking. It's almost over the top, and I didn't come from a wealthy family, but I did visit a boarding school a couple times because my dad was very, very religious when I was younger, and the school I was going to when I lived with him, it stopped at 8th grade, and then all the kids went to a school in Wisconsin that was a boarding school. And so like I did like spend a couple weekends there, and I didn't see any drug use, but also like it was a Christian school, and also I don't know if like necessarily they're like, hey 13-year-old, do you want to do some fucking drugs with us? Because like who shares their expensive drugs with kids who might tattle on them, you know what I mean? So anyways, lots of illicit drug use, lots of drinking. The girls are very open about having sex with like the boys in the Abbott school, which is like, I don't know, not so far away. I mean, the boys in the Abbott school can see the Hanley school from where they are. I think it's the Abbott school. Hopefully I'm not getting that mixed up with another book, but it's just very 80s. It's over the top. It doesn't really make sense. And during the school year, Vanessa and some of her friends are performing this play, or they're rehearsing to perform this play. And it seems like the performance of the play, like the act of performing the play, will bring forth some sort of like satanic thing that has lived in the ground of the school ground. Like it's like lived in the area, like this ancient evil in the ground sort of a thing, which is kind of funny because like the Abbott school isn't that far away and does not have that problem. So it's like, so, I don't know. Anyways, it seems like this evil that's in the school is influencing everybody this year. And it's pretty outrageous. I thought this was good. Better than, not as good as some, but also better than, you know, many of the older vintage horror books I've read. This was published by Leisure, and I just want to read a couple funny things that I bookmarked here. This one's just really funny and doesn't really necessarily speak to how 80s this is, but I liked this passage. It says, "Don't knock Anonymous," Bobby said. "He wrote a lot of good shit." It's like, that's clever, Bobby. But this one is one of my favorite passages in this book. "Vanessa, look at me." "I can't," she moaned. Vanessa kept her eyes squeezed tight. "Yes, you can." Dennis tugged her by her hair, forcing her to face him. Now this is the good part. Recognizing the signs of hysterical behavior, he slapped Vanessa. Not hard, but just enough to stun her. It worked. Her eyes shot open. As if all teenage boys are taught how to deal with a hysterical woman. That's obviously by slapping them across the face. It's just so, just fucking goofy. But if you're into vintage horror, this is definitely one that I think I would recommend. Like I said, not the best, but definitely not the worst. Just one that was entertaining and funny. Next here I have Bunny by Mona Awad. This was published in 2019, so this is only a few years old. And I read this when it first came out, and it's really just stuck in my mind since then as one of the absolutely most like strange books I've ever read. It's so fucking weird. In this, we follow Samantha, who is taking, I think, undergrad courses, and the classes that she's taking, the group of students in those classes are very small. There's only, it's like her and then a couple other girls who are very obviously in like a clique, and they're all friends, and they're kind of weird, and they definitely ostracize Samantha. And this group of girls, they call themselves bunnies, and singularly they call each other Bunny. They're all just Bunny, and they are very touchy-feely. They wear like weird cutesy stuff. They talk in little tiny baby voices and eat little mini cakes and drink tea, and it's very almost like infantile. But the fact that they keep Samantha out of this really irks her, even though it's like she is so annoyed by these people. And it's like even more annoying that she somehow, it's almost like she thinks that they're beneath her because of the way that they act. But yet it's like so tantalizing when she gets invited by them to attend what they call a salon. And she goes, and things get really fucking weird. There's like, I don't know exactly how much of this to talk about because it is just such a strange experience, but there might be some reanimation and it's very fucking weird. It's so fucking weird. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you about this. It's so strange. It's so strange and well written. The voice of the bunnies in this is just so clear. Like the way that their dialogue is written out and stuff like that. It's like so clear in your head. You can hear these voices even though you've never actually heard them before. And this was such a fun, very strange book. It takes place on a college campus, so that's where, you know, kind of the dark academia plays into it. They're college students, they're taking college courses and things like that, so it's just very weird. All right, this next book is called A Lesson in Vengeance, and this is by Victoria Lee. This was published in 2021, and this was my least favorite of the bunch, which really bummed me out. I thought that I was really going to love this. This takes place at a girls' boarding school that's more like high school students rather than college. This revolves around a girl named Felicity who is coming back to school to repeat her senior year because the first time she did her senior year through, her girlfriend tragically died. Her body has never been discovered. It's not really known exactly what happened because the body's never been discovered, so she's had a lot of shit to work through. She missed the last half of the year, very understandably, and now she's back and she just wants to power through it and finish school. And this is another really prestigious school that, you know, only the children basically of wealthy families get into. I believe they do talk about a couple girls in this who are scholarship students and things like that, but so this is called the Dalloway School, and there are different like dorm houses, but they're like real houses, which is kind of cool. And I know some colleges do that and some don't. And the house that Felicity lives in is like the house that all the girls want to get into. Is called the Godwin House. In the history of this school, there were I think 5 girls in more like the puritanical times who died, and they were accused of being witches, and they all had kind of mysterious deaths. And Felicity, in her first go at senior year, became really obsessed with these young women, and she was doing like witchcraft and stuff like that. And, you know, kind of just as a way to see how people think that they were living, kind of, if that makes sense, you know, just kind of like method acting, kind of, in order to write this really great thesis. And so now she's back. She really has a feeling that dabbling in this stuff in her first go at senior year is really what caused some of the problems that ended up happening in her life. And so she's trying to stay away from that. She's trying to stay clean, but as the year goes on, it gets harder to stay away from those temptations and like those familiarities and things like that. And we also have a new girl at this school. Her name is Ellis Haley, and she's like a novelist, like has been published and things like that, but she's only a high school student. And so all the girls are very taken by Ellis, and she's so eloquent and strange and eccentric and things like that. And her and Felicity really seem to click, and Felicity shares these things that have happened in her life with Ellis, and they start to bond. But the whole book, you're like, something isn't quite right here. And I think that there are a couple good twists in this, and it's like these sinking feelings that you have are validated, but there are some things that just like don't end up making sense to me. And all in all, I thought that this was a very long book for what it ended up being, and I don't necessarily love the ending, especially because it was so just like, it's like the author just sprinted through the ending. She, you know, just kind of slowly walked through the rest of the book, but the ending, it was like, boom, done, that's it. And it was just too clean cut for me, I think, and it was so abrupt compared to the pacing of the rest of the book. And like, I get it, the climax is supposed to be a little more sped up. Obviously, we want it to go and we want to keep people entertained, but I don't know, this just felt really flat. And after reading it, I was really like, man, like, I don't think anything about this book is really going to linger on in my head, unfortunately. So that's what I thought about Lesson in Vengeance. Not my favorite. Okay, last year, Inspection by Josh Malerman. This was also published in 2019. This, oh boy, it's hard. My feelings about this are very, very, very conflicted, and we'll get to why that is. Oh gosh. So this is kind of dystopian in the way that there is this tower, and it's all full of young boys. They're like 12 years old, and they've been raised to believe that there are only boys and men, and boys grow into men, right? But there's no other sex or gender out there. There's no intersex people, there's no females or anything like that. They're just boys that grow into men, and every sort of thing that they consume has been very carefully screened so that there's nothing ever about anything besides boys and men. And it's an experiment. It's a social experiment, I suppose. And the man who runs this, Richard, he has this theory that if boys are not exposed to anything besides boys, so this is where it gets conflicting, because the author definitely draws a line in the sand and says that there are only boys and only girls, right? And I know that that's not his personal opinion on things, so that's where I'm kind of conflicted, because we know that obviously there's not just boys and girls. There's people who are non-binary, there's people who are trans, there's people who are intersex. It's not just black and white like that. And so, okay, so anyways, everything, Richard really believes that if boys are never exposed to girls and women, that they will be more successful. And he's raising these really, really smart boys who don't know anything about girls or women. And now they're 12, and they're getting to that time where most people start to go through puberty. And this is another flaw of the book, is like, some people are gay, so it doesn't really make sense to, I mean, you would just have to totally isolate somebody in reality, to make sure that they never know about, to make sure that they never develop romantic feelings for anybody or anything. And like, sexuality is so much more complex than just boys liking girls. So I don't know, part of me is like, throw this whole book out, but part of me really, really loved this book despite all its weird, I don't know, inferences about sexuality and gender. So I don't know. So it's a social experiment. The alphabet boys, they call them, because there's A through Z, all live by these very strict rules. They are, you know, only exposed to boys and men, and they look up to their DAD, which is Richard, their dad, and they know that sometimes he gets a little bit out of hand, but they also really like seek out his affection and his what am I trying to say, his what's it called when someone's proud of you? They want him to be proud of them and things like that. So it's a very complicated thing in and of itself. And they know that if you're bad, if you're unclean, you'll get sent to a place called the Corner, where 2 boys have been sent and have never come back from. So it's very spooky, right? Like, bad kids go to the Corner and they never come back. And so as we're entering this book, there are some weaknesses in the tower, so to speak. There are some machinations that aren't working so well, and pretty soon everything's going to implode. It's just really a really great book. I love the friendships that are in this book. I love I don't know. I really want to say I love the idea about it, but I understand that it would be very, very complex to have to navigate through the complexity of gender and sexuality instead of just making it like a binary thing, which the author chose to do for this. So I don't know. It's just a really interesting look at a fictional social experiment, and you really have to suspend your disbelief and kind of play along with, you know, what the author and what Richard in this book is doing. And I don't know, it's very complex, as I told you. So I don't really know what else to tell you about this book. I mean, I could go on for 20 minutes talking about it, but I guess I've said all I have to say. That's, you know, any important point about it. It is what it is, I suppose. So read at your own risk, obviously. I totally understand if people have different opinions on that one, because like I said, myself, I feel very conflicted about my feelings on it. That's all I have for you for this video. This ran a little bit longer than I was expecting, but I had a lot to say about these books that I read in these dark academia tropes. As always, I'd love to know what you thought about these, if you've read any of them. I'd love to know if you have any recommendations for other like academic horror type of books. And as always, I have in my description like affiliate links, and I have a list on bookshop.org of all the books that I talk about in my trope videos if you'd like to buy any of those through there. And that's really it. So I would like to say thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and I will see you later. Goodbye!